Hey guys, so this video is on vaccines. It's part of our immunity unit and it follows on from the different types of immunity we looked at last week. So our learning intention is to understand how vaccines can achieve artificial active immunity. Again, it's touching on that last lesson we learned about, and to understand the concept of herd immunity. So a vaccine is just a biological preparation that provides active immunity. It's a vaccine typically contains an agent that resembles a disease-causing mechanism in a weakened or killed form. So it's a bit of a complex definition. If we break it down, it's a biological preparation, means it's a man-made device, and it provides active immunity. So we know when we use that word active, we're talking about the production of memory cells and more long-term immunity, and it contains part of a disease-causing microorganism, so a pathogen, in either a weakened or killed form. So there are a wide range of vaccines of different types. Whole agent vaccines contain the entire pathogen, but they're often killed or weakened, and we sometimes use the term attenuated. So it's still the entire pathogen, but there's some aspect of it that no longer works as it normally should. Or we can use these things called subunit vaccines, where they might put part of a pathogen and we still are able to respond to that small section, and it still creates those memory cells, but it's not the entire pathogen in there. So it could be part of something like a membrane or a particular toxin that, say, the pathogen releases that we're going to respond to. So the role of vaccines, we use vaccines for a wide range of reasons. The first and most common use is to prevent the increase of once common diseases. So things like measles and mumps really don't exist in our society to a point where they are highly dangerous. However, once upon a time, those diseases would have been rampant. So using vaccines has lowered the ability for that disease to spread, and therefore it's not a common disease in children anymore. We also use them for seasonal diseases, so things like the common flu, and we all go and get our flu shot each year. That's to provide immunity for that specific season of flu, and then the next year we're seeing a different one as the year goes on. So just to provide that immunity so that seasonal flu doesn't take over. And we also use them for people who are traveling. So if you're going to an area where there are diseases that you don't normally come into contact with, you may not have any immunity against them, and you would need to get a travel vaccination. So, for example, if you're traveling to certain parts of Southeast Asia, for example, you would need a yellow fever or a dengue fever shot, because we don't have that in Australia. We don't have any natural immunity, so it'd be important for us to get that when we're traveling to that sort of location. So they are quite versatile in their uses, and you can see that they're not only for preventing diseases like measles and mumps. So how do they work? Well, what we rely on is the fact that the vaccine will still trigger an immune response, and specifically we want an adaptive immune response because we want those highly specific memory cells to be developed. So if we have a look at this diagram, the vaccine actually contains part of the pathogen. So here, this is, for example, a bacteria. So we would inject a weakened or a killed version of that bacteria. Our body would make those specific antibodies that we've talked about over the last few lessons against that bacteria. And then we would develop memory cells. So then if we came into contact with that bacteria just naturally, we touched something that had the bacteria, we've already got those memory cells ready to make the bacteria and the antibodies for them straight away. So we're relying on the fact that our body has a process. We're just exploiting that process to make it happen when we want it to, by putting in a weakened version. Without memory cells, vaccines wouldn't work. So we rely on our cells being able to remember, or immunological memory, the second time we come across a pathogen. So with vaccinations, they're often given in schedules. And so when we get our first vaccination, over time, our memory cells start to decline. And so we often use a booster shot. So you may have had, say, a shot when you were in primary school and need another one when you're in year 11 and 12. And that's because we get a gradual decline in immunity. And so the second time we get exposed to the pathogen, we develop even more memory cells and a much larger response. And it means that we're going to have that longer lasting immunity again. So here in the graph, you can see here's our first injection occurring, and we get an antibody concentration that rises, but eventually drops off. And over time, we get that second exposure. Now that could be natural exposure, or it could be another booster shot, and we get a much greater response, and we have much more memory cell development, which means we're going to have it even longer before we need another booster or another vaccination. The reason why we also use vaccines is to try and achieve herd immunity. You might have heard this in the news recently to do with coronavirus. But that is when a population is immunised against a disease, and it has to be quite a significant portion. So we're talking a large percentage immunised, and that protects people who can't be immunised. So for example, people who are going through cancer treatments, or they might have an immune disease, can't get vaccinations. It's too risky to put a pathogen inside of them. So they rely on the rest of us to become vaccinated. So here you can see in this GIF, we've got these people in grey who may not be able to be vaccinated. So they could be cancer patients or people with immune diseases. And we've got everyone else in blue who is vaccinated, and red are the people who have caught the disease. So as you can see, because the large population are mainly vaccinated, the ones that aren't in contact with them, these three here, they stay protected. The person, if we look here, who is originally at risk, because they're not around people who are vaccinated, they're actually going to develop disease as well. So herd immunity relies on the fact that a lot of us will get vaccinated to protect those who can't. And so there's a variety of reasons for that. The next GIF might show what happens if there was a low vaccination rate. So you can see that here, these two infected people are going to infect a large amount of people if they're not vaccinated. So again, we've only got a few vaccinated in blue. And when they are spreading, you can see those blue people are not able to protect too many. So a low vaccination rate is not that effective at achieving herd immunity. When we come back to school, we're going to have an activity. We're going to replicate some herd immunity and work out what some ideal percentages are for certain diseases. For example, measles, it needs about 92% of people to be vaccinated to protect the spread. So that's why you might have heard in kindergartens that no jab, no play, is because they're trying to achieve herd immunity in that younger generation. So in review, vaccines are just injections of weakened, and we use the term attenuated, or killed disease-causing agents, and they rely on our immune system creating memory cells. And we then use boosters to increase that immune response, and we use them to eliminate diseases or protection against seasonal diseases. And really, we try and use them also to achieve that herd immunity and protect people who can't be vaccinated. So I hope this video helped.